They had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their empire stretched across 300 star systems. They had conquered 47 different species. They had never lost a war. They believed with absolute certainty that they were the greatest civilization in the galaxy. Admiral stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and looked at the tactical display. 300 warships floated behind her, each one capable of destroying a planet. This was a subjugation fleet, the same kind that had used countless times before. The target was a small yellow star on the edge of explored space. Long-range sensors had detected radio signals coming from this system. The signals were crude, simple, the kind of transmissions a primitive species would make. The High Council had ordered Admiral to investigate and, if necessary, bring these primitives under Dominion control. It was routine work, boring even. The fleet jumped through hyperspace and arrived in the system. A's sensors immediately detected activity around the third planet from the star. Ships were moving. Satellites orbited the world. The planet itself showed signs of heavy industrialization. Analysis, A ordered. Her science officer studied his screens. The species calls themselves humans. They appear to have achieved faster-than-light travel approximately 100 standard years ago. Their technology is primitive compared to ours. Their weapons would be ineffective against our shields. They have colonized 7 worlds in nearby systems. A made a sound of amusement. 100 years of space travel. They had been crossing the stars when these creatures were still living in caves. Open a communication channel, she said. The humans responded quickly. A face appeared on the main screen. It was a strange-looking creature with soft skin, 2 small eyes, and hair on top of its head. The creature wore some kind of formal clothing and spoke in a calm voice. I am Secretary General of the United Earth Government. We welcome peaceful contact with your civilization. We hope we can establish diplomatic relations and learn from each other. I studied the human. It seemed sincere. It seemed hopeful. It had no idea what was about to happen. I am Admiral of the Dominion, she replied. Your species and your worlds now belong to the Dominion. You will provide tribute, resources, and labor as we require. Resistance will result in punishment. The human's expression changed. The hope faded. Something else appeared in its eyes, something it did not recognize. Admiral, the human said slowly, we have no desire for conflict, but we are a free people. We will not submit to any empire. I urge you to reconsider this course of action. I ended the transmission. She had heard such words before from dozens of species. They always said the same things. They always believed they were different. They always learned the truth. Set course for their colony in the system, she ordered. We will demonstrate what happens to those who refuse the Dominion. The fleet jumped again. Within hours, they arrived at 442b, a world the humans had colonized 50 years earlier. It was a beautiful planet with blue oceans and green forests. Cities dotted the surface. Ships moved in orbit. 18 million humans lived on this world. They had built homes here. They had raised families. They had created a new civilization far from their original planet. I felt nothing as she gave the order. Destroy it. The fleet opened fire. Plasma beams rained down from orbit. Nuclear explosions blossomed across the surface. The cities burned. The forests burned. The oceans boiled. It took 6 hours to complete the destruction. When it was over, nothing remained. The planet's surface was glass and ash. 18 million lives had ended. I transmitted a message to Earth. This is what happens to those who refuse the Dominion. You have 1 standard month to submit. If you do not, we will do the same to every human world, including your. She expected fear. She expected panic. She expected the humans to immediately begin sending messages of surrender. Instead, she received silence. Days passed. No response came from Earth. The human government did not reply to any transmissions. Their ships retreated from Dominion space. Their colonies went dark. I found this strange but not concerning. She had seen this before. Some species needed time to accept their defeat. Some species went through periods of shock before they submitted. The humans were probably arguing among themselves, trying to decide whether to fight or surrender. They would choose surrender. They always did. She reported her success to the High Council. The Council was pleased. Another species would soon join the Dominion's collection. Another source of tribute and labor would strengthen their empire. Remain in the area, the Council ordered. Accept their surrender when it comes. Begin the process of integration. I acknowledged the order and waited. 1 month passed. No surrender came. I grew impatient. She sent more messages to Earth. She demanded response. She threatened further destruction. The humans said nothing. 2 months passed. Intelligence probes were sent toward human space. None of them returned. They simply vanished, sending no data, no distress signals, nothing. I began to feel something she had not felt in many years. It took her time to recognize it. It was doubt. The High Council grew angry. They had expected quick submission. They had expected the humans to behave like every other species. This silence was unusual. It was disrespectful. Proceed to the Council ordered. Complete the subjugation. Make them understand their place. I acknowledged the order. She gathered her fleet and prepared for the jump to Sol, the human home system. As her ships entered hyperspace, she thought about the human leader she had spoken with, Secretary General. She remembered the look in his eyes when she had made her demands. She had not recognized that look at the time. Now, as she traveled toward Earth, she found herself thinking about it more and more. It had not been fear. It had not been despair. It had been something else entirely. She told herself it did not matter. The humans were primitive. Their technology was weak. They could not possibly threaten the Dominion. But as the Eternal Dominion dropped out of hyperspace and Earth appeared on her screens, Admiral finally understood what she had seen in that human's eyes. It had been a warning, and she had ignored it. Admiral stared at her sensor displays and tried to understand what she was seeing. 3 months ago, Earth had been a moderately developed world with basic orbital infrastructure. A few hundred ships, some defense satellites, nothing that could threaten a patrol vessel, let alone a subjugation fleet. Now, Earth was surrounded by a wall of metal and fire. Thousands of ships filled the space around the planet. They were crude vessels, yes, built with primitive human technology, but there were so many of them. Her sensors counted over 8,000 combat-capable craft, with more launching from the surface every hour. Orbital platforms bristled with weapons. Defense stations hung at strategic points throughout the system. Mining operations on the asteroid belt had been converted into manufacturing centers, producing ships and weapons at an impossible rate. "How is this possible?" I asked quietly. Her tactical officer checked his readings 3 times before answering. "Unknown, Admiral. Human industrial capacity was estimated at 1/10 of what we are observing. They should not have been able to produce this level of military hardware in 3 months. It should have taken them decades." I felt cold. They did not understand what they were facing. They did not understand what humans became when their children were murdered. On Earth, the past 3 months had been unlike anything in human history. The destruction of 442b had not broken humanity. It had united them in a way nothing else ever had. Every nation on Earth had put aside their differences. Every factory had shifted to war production. Every scientist had focused on a single goal. The 18 million dead would be avenged. Secretary General had addressed the planet the day after the attack. His words were broadcast to every screen, every radio, every device capable of receiving a signal. "They think we are weak," he had said. "They think we will submit. They think we will bow our heads and accept slavery. They are wrong. We are not a species that surrenders. We are not a species that forgets. For every one of our people they killed, we will make them pay a price they cannot imagine. This is not a war we chose, but it is a war we will finish. The response had been immediate and overwhelming. Millions volunteered for military service. Factories that had made cars now made tanks and aircraft and ships. Universities abandoned all other research to focus on weapons and defense systems. The entire human economy transformed into a machine designed for one purpose: war. Human engineers worked around the clock. They studied technology captured from destroyed probes. They improved their own designs. They created new weapons that had only existed in theory before. The FTL interdiction field was invented in a laboratory in Switzerland. The mass driver cannons were designed in Japan. The new shield generators came from a research team in Brazil. Each breakthrough was shared instantly with every other research team on the planet. There was no competition, no secrecy, no delay. Humanity worked together as a single organism. And they did not sleep. Admiral A did not know any of this. She only saw the results. She only saw 8,000 ships where there should have been hundreds. She only saw weapons that should not exist on vessels that should not have been built. "We are being hailed," her communications officer reported. On screen, the face that appeared was familiar. Secretary General looked older than he had 3 months ago. His eyes were tired, but his voice was steady. "Admiral A," he said, "you have entered Sol system. This is human territory. You are not welcome here." A forced herself to project confidence. "You cannot possibly believe you can resist us. Your technology is primitive. Your ships are inferior. Surrender now and I will spare you the fate of 442B. Smiled, it was not a pleasant expression. "Admiral, you made a mistake. You thought killing our people would make us afraid. You thought we would see your power and lose hope. But you do not understand humans. When you threaten our families, when you murder our children, we do not become afraid. We become something else." He leaned forward. "You killed 18 million of us. We remember every single one of them. We have memorized their names. We have seen pictures of their faces. We know who they were, what they loved, what they dreamed of. And every human being in this system has sworn an oath to make sure their deaths mean something." I felt the cold sensation growing stronger. "You cannot win this battle." "Maybe not," agreed. "Maybe you will destroy us today. Maybe your 300 ships will defeat our 8,000. Maybe you will burn Earth the way you burned, but I promise you this, Admiral. You will not leave this system. Whatever happens to us, you will share our fate. Every ship in your fleet will become a tomb. And when the rest of your empire learns what happened here, they will understand something important." "And what is that?" Smile faded. His eyes became cold. "Humanity does not submit. Humanity does not forget. And humanity does not forgive." The transmission ended. I stood in silence for a long moment. Around her, her officers waited for orders. 300 warships floated in formation, each one crewed by soldiers who had never known defeat. She thought about retreating. She thought about reporting to the High Council, explaining the situation, requesting reinforcements. The sensible thing to do would be to gather more intelligence, to understand how the humans had achieved this impossible transformation. But I had never retreated. I had never retreated. To flee from primitives would be the greatest shame imaginable. "All ships," she ordered, "advance and engage." The fleet moved forward. 8,000 human ships rose to meet them. In the space between the two forces, the future of both species would be decided. And Admiral A, for the first time in her long career, was not certain of victory. The Battle of Sol began at 600 hours Earth time. It would last 11 hours. It would change everything. Admiral A expected the humans to fight defensively. Every species that had ever conquered had done the same thing. They protected their They formed defensive lines. They waited for the enemy to come to them. The humans did not do this. The moment the fleet advanced, the human ships scattered. They broke into dozens of small groups and attacked from every direction at once. They came from above, below, the sides. They emerged from behind asteroids and moons. They appeared from the shadow of the sun itself. I had never seen anything like it. The first hour was chaos. Human ships swarmed her fleet like angry insects. They were fast and reckless. They pushed their engines beyond safe limits. They fired their weapons until the barrels melted. When their ships were damaged, they did not retreat. They kept fighting until their vessels exploded. 47 warships were destroyed in the first 60 minutes. I watched in disbelief as her sensor displays filled with damage reports. Human weapons should not have been able to penetrate shields, but the humans had done something to their missiles. They had created new warheads that disrupted shield frequencies. They had designed kinetic projectiles that punched through armor like paper. 3 months. They had developed all of this in 3 months. Admiral, her tactical officer, reported, his voice shaking. "We are taking casualties at an unsustainable rate. Recommend tactical withdrawal." I shook her head. "We outnumber them, our ships are superior, press the attack." But the numbers did not matter as much as she had believed. The humans flew their ships in ways that should have been impossible. They performed maneuvers that should have killed their crews. They coordinated their attacks with perfect precision, as if thousands of pilots shared a single mind. By the third hour, I had lost 100 ships. The humans lost more, perhaps 3 times as many, but they had ships to spare, and they did not seem to care about their losses. When one human vessel was destroyed, 2 more took its place. When a pilot died, another was ready to launch. They were not fighting to survive. They were fighting to kill. By the 6th hour, half the fleet was gone. I finally gave the order she had never imagined giving. "All ships retreat, jump to hyperspace, return to Dominion space." The acknowledgments came immediately. Her surviving ships turned away from the battle and activated their FTL drives. Nothing happened. "Reports," I demanded. Her engineering officer looked pale. "FTL drives are non-functional. There is some kind of field surrounding the system. It is blocking hyperspace transitions." I felt her heart freeze. "That is impossible. Such technology does not exist." "It does now," the officer replied quietly. "The humans built it." The humans had trapped them. The entire fleet was locked inside Sol's system with no way to escape. And the human ships were still coming, endless waves of them, each one crewed by pilots who knew they might die and did not care. The slaughter continued. By the 9th hour, I had fewer than 50 ships remaining. The humans surrounded her fleet. They could have destroyed her at any moment. Instead, they seemed to be waiting. "We are being hailed," the communications officer said. On screen. It was not Secretary General this time. It was a military officer, a woman with short hair and cold eyes. She wore combat armor and stood on the bridge of a human warship. "Admiral, the woman said. "I am Fleet Admiral Sarah. You are surrounded. Your fleet is defeated. You have 2 choices, surrender and live, or continue fighting and die. There will be no third option." I looked at her displays, 50 ships, 8,000 humans. The mathematics were simple. But surrender was something that did not do. "We will never surrender to primitives," I said. "All ships attack. We will die with honor." Admiral nodded slowly. "I thought you might say that." The final assault lasted 2 hours. They fought with everything they had. They destroyed hundreds of human ships. They killed thousands of human soldiers. They made humanity pay for every meter of space. But it was not enough. One by one, the ships were disabled. Not destroyed, but disabled. The humans targeted engines and weapons, leaving the ships crippled but intact. They did not want to kill the crews. They wanted prisoners. The Eternal Dominion was boarded at hour 11. Stood on her bridge with a weapon in her hand as human soldiers cut through her doors. Her elite guards formed a line in front of her. They were the best warriors in the Dominion, trained since birth for combat. The human soldiers killed them in 90 seconds. They moved like machines, precise and efficient. Their powered armor made them stronger and faster than any. Their weapons punched through Dominion armor like it was cloth. They did not hesitate. They did not show mercy. When the fighting stopped, was alone on her bridge. Bodies surrounded her. The smell of blood filled the air. A human soldier approached her. The helmet was featureless, showing no face, no emotion, just a smooth surface that reflected A's own terrified expression. "Admiral, the soldier said, you are under arrest for war crimes against humanity. You will be taken to Earth for trial." A raised her weapon. "I would rather die." The soldier moved faster than she could see. The weapon was torn from her grasp. A hand closed around her throat, lifting her off the ground. "You killed 18 million of us," the soldier said. "You do not get to choose an easy death. You are going to live. You are going to answer for what you did, and you are going to help us make sure it never happens again." The soldier released her, fell to the floor, gasping for breath. As human soldiers secured her wrists and led her away, she understood something terrible. The battle was over. They had lost. But the war was just beginning. And humanity was coming for the Dominion. The High Council learned of their fleet's destruction through a human broadcast. It was transmitted on every frequency, sent to every corner of the galaxy. Any civilization with the technology to receive signals could watch. The broadcast began with a list of names. 18 million names scrolling across the screen one by one. Each name was accompanied by a photograph, an age, and a brief description. A teacher, a child, an engineer, a grandmother, a pilot, a student. Each one a person who had lived on 442B, each one murdered by the names scrolled for hours, days. The broadcast continued without pause. And then, after the final name, a single message appeared on the screen. "We are coming." The High Council did not know how to respond. In 12,000 years, no species had ever threatened no species had ever defeated a fleet. No species had ever dared to challenge the Dominion. "They are bluffing," one council member declared. "They destroyed one fleet through trickery. They cannot threaten our core systems." "Send another fleet," another member suggested. "Send 5 fleets, destroy there and be done with it." But as the council argued, reports began arriving from the borders of Dominion space. Human ships had appeared at a military shipyard in the system. They had destroyed every vessel, every station, every piece of military infrastructure. They had not touched civilian targets. They had not harmed workers or families. They had simply eliminated everything related to war and then vanished. The same thing happened at the defense station, then the training academy at Prime, then the weapons research facility at VII. The humans were not invading. They were not conquering. They were systematically destroying the Dominion's ability to fight. And they were broadcasting Admiral A's interrogation. The video showed the Admiral sitting in a human cell. She looked tired, broken. Her scales had lost their shine. Her eyes were empty. A human interrogator sat across from her, asking questions in a calm voice. "Tell us about the Dominion's fleet positions." Anna told them. She told them everything. The locations of hidden bases, the deployment of reserve forces, the names of high-ranking officers, the political structure of the council, everything. She spoke because the humans asked politely. She spoke because she had seen what they did when they stopped asking politely. She spoke because she understood, finally, what kind of species humanity really was. The broadcast was seen by every tributary species in the Dominion. 47 civilizations had lived under rule for thousands of years. They had been conquered, enslaved, broken. They had learned to bow their heads and accept their place. Now they watched the mighty humbled by primitives. On the planet, the people saw the broadcast and began to whisper. On Prime, the workers stopped reporting to their factories. On 17 different worlds, tributary species looked at each other and asked the same question. If the humans could defy the Dominion, why couldn't they? The rebellions began slowly. A protest here, a strike there. Nothing the Dominion could not handle under normal circumstances. But these were not normal circumstances. The Dominion's military was being destroyed piece by piece. Their ships could not catch the human raiders. Their stations could not defend against human weapons. Every time they sent forces to deal with rebels, the humans appeared somewhere else and destroyed another military target. Secretary General addressed the tributary species directly. His message was simple. We are not your rulers. We do not want to control you. We only want to ensure that they can never again murder innocent people. When this war is over, you will be free. What you do with that freedom is your choice. They were the first to openly revolt. They seized control of their planet and declared independence from the Dominion. They sent a fleet to crush them. The fleet never arrived. Human ships intercepted it halfway there. When the battle ended, the fleet was floating wreckage. More species joined the rebellion. The Dominion's grip on its empire weakened with each passing day. Resources that should have gone to fighting humans went to suppressing internal revolts. Ships that should have defended the core systems were scattered across the galaxy, trying to maintain order. And still the humans came. They moved deeper into Dominion territory. They destroyed military bases and shipyards. They broadcast A's continuing interrogation, each session revealing more secrets. They showed the galaxy that they were not invincible. They showed the galaxy that empires could fall. The High Council met in emergency session after emergency session. They argued. They blamed each other. They executed officers for failures. Nothing worked. One council member suggested negotiation. Perhaps we can offer the humans something: peace, trade, compensation for their losses. Another member laughed bitterly. We killed 18 million of their people. Do you really believe they will accept money? Then what do we do? The chamber fell silent. No one had an answer. On the border of the core systems, human ships continued to gather. More arrived every day. The fleet that had seemed impossible 3 months ago had tripled in size. Human factories produced ships faster than the Dominion could count them. And in her cell on Earth, Admiral watched the news broadcasts. She saw her empire crumbling. She saw everything she had believed in being torn apart. A human guard brought her food. Looked at him with exhausted eyes. Why, she asked. Why are you doing this? We killed your people. We threatened your world. Why do you not simply destroy us? The guard considered the question. He was young, perhaps 20 standard years old. He had probably lost family on 442B. Because that is not who we are, he said finally. We do not want to be like you. We do not want to rule. We just want to make sure you can never hurt anyone again. He left the food and walked away. I ate in silence. She thought about his words for a long time. And for the first time, she began to understand what humanity really wanted. Not conquest, not revenge, not power. Justice. The Dominion surrendered 18 months after the destruction of 442B. The document was signed in the Great Chamber of the High Council, the same room where the order to attack humanity had been given. Human representatives stood on one side. The surviving council members stood on the other. Between them lay the weight of millions of dead and an empire reduced to ruins. The terms were harsh but not cruel. Complete demilitarization. They would disband all military forces. They would destroy all weapons of war. They would never again build ships capable of threatening other species. Reparations. They would pay compensation to every species they had conquered, enslaved, or harmed during their 12,000 years of empire. The payments would continue for generations. Freedom, all tributary species would be released from control immediately. They would govern themselves. They would choose their own futures. Justice, every official involved in the decision to attack humanity would face trial. Every officer who had participated in the destruction of 442b would answer for their actions. The council members signed the document with trembling hands. They had expected genocide. They had expected humanity to burn there the way 442b had burned. They had prepared themselves for extinction. Instead, humanity offered them life, reduced, humiliated, stripped of power, but life. Secretary General spoke to the council after the signing. "You made a mistake," he said. "You saw our small bodies and short lives and assumed we were weak. You saw our primitive technology and assumed we were inferior. You killed 18 million of our people and expected us to surrender." He paused. "We are not weak, we are not inferior, and we never surrender. But we are also not monsters. We did not come here to destroy you. We came here to make sure you could never destroy anyone else." He looked at each council member in turn. "Learn from this. Teach your children. Remember what happened when you underestimated humanity, and never make this mistake again." The trials lasted 3 years. 217 officials were charged with war crimes. Most were found guilty. Some were executed. Others were sentenced to imprisonment. A few, those who had expressed opposition to the attack, were shown mercy. Admiral A was a special case. She had given the order to destroy 442b. By any measure, she was guilty of mass murder. The prosecutors demanded execution. But I had also cooperated fully with human forces. Her information had saved countless lives. Her testimony had helped bring other war criminals to justice. She had done everything the humans asked without resistance. The court offered her a choice: execution as her crimes deserved, or service teaching future generations what she had learned. I chose to teach. She was assigned to the Human Military Academy on Earth. Her job was to explain tactics, thinking, mistakes. Every new class of officers would hear her story. Every new generation would understand what had happened and why. At first, the human students hated her. She was the monster who had killed millions of their people. They looked at her with cold eyes and clenched fists. But as the years passed, something changed. O was honest about what she had done. She did not make excuses. She did not try to justify her actions. She simply explained what she had been thinking and why she had been wrong. "I saw your species as primitive," she told one class. "I saw your short lives and small bodies and assumed you were inferior. I believed they were the greatest civilization in the galaxy. I believed we had the right to rule others." She paused. "I was wrong about all of it." The students listened. Some still hated her, but others began to see her as something else: a warning, a lesson, a reminder of what arrogance and cruelty could lead to. Decades passed. The Dominion slowly rebuilt itself as a peaceful trading civilization. The tributary species formed their own governments, made their own choices, lived their own lives. The galaxy changed in ways no one had predicted. Anna continued to teach. She was old now, ancient by standards. Her scales had faded too. Her movements were slow, but her mind remained sharp and students still came to hear her speak. One day, a young visited her office. He was a diplomat sent to Earth as part of the new relationship between their species. He wanted to understand what had happened. He wanted to understand humans. "What are they really like?" he asked. "The humans, what should I know about them?" I considered the question for a long time. "They are small," she said finally, "short-lived, fragile. They fight among themselves constantly. They are sentimental and irrational. They make decisions based on emotion rather than logic." The young nodded. "They sound weak." That is what I thought, agreed. That is what the entire Dominion thought. We were wrong. She turned to look out the window. Human cadets were training in the courtyard below, running and climbing and practicing combat. They were laughing as they worked. They seemed happy. When you threaten what they love, continued, they become something else entirely, something that does not stop, something that does not forget, something that does not forgive until justice is served. She looked back at the young diplomat. They showed us mercy. They could have destroyed us. They could have burned our worlds and ended our species. Instead, they let us live. They gave us a chance to become something better. The young was quiet for a moment. Do you regret what you did? Closed her eyes. 18 million faces flashed through her memory. Names she had been forced to memorize during her trial. People who had died because of her orders. Every day, she said, I will regret it until I die, but regret changes nothing. All I can do now is teach others to be better than I was. The young diplomat left. Remained at her window, watching the human cadets train. She thought about the strange path that had brought her here, from conqueror to prisoner to teacher, from certainty to doubt to understanding. The humans had beaten her. They had destroyed her fleet, humiliated her empire, and forced her to face the truth about herself. But they had also given her something she had never expected. A second chance. And that, a thought, was perhaps the most human thing of all.